Hey everybody, Alex here. Welcome to week 5. I hope you're having a good semester so far and that everything's rolling along in your professional life as well. But we're here today to talk about week 5 and what you're doing for week 5. Remember, this is stuff that you should be doing throughout the week, although there is one very time-sensitive thing. Your first project installment is due September 25th. That's Tuesday, so you want to make sure that you get that in. Remember, this is a single-space proposal for which option, and there are 4 options for you to choose from, and which topic you want to pursue for the final project. That should be about one page telling me which option and topic you want to pursue for the final project. In that one page, I would be clear about what the point or issue or problem is that you're pursuing or that you're investigating. Provide a rationale for why that would be interesting and appropriate to pursue. Both a professional or a scholarly rationale would be fine. Also give a brief outline, 1 to 2 pages, of what your final project might look like. That would include things like your section headings, the kinds of information or evidence from the literature or previously published research that you might want to use as part of this. Remember, I'm not asking you to do anything that involves an empirical component that you would do yourself. You don't have to collect data for this. But if you're using evidence from other published reports, then you should make that clear in this outline as well. And an initial bibliography, which will have 10 to 15 key references. This is important because it gives me an idea that you understand where you're going to get the information from to do this project. Now, all you got to do is click on this fancy little heading here, and it will take you into the upload assignment section. Tells you when it's due, tells you that you have to get it in before midnight, tells you that it's 10 points that are possible. And I am using a rubric for your written assignments. It's a pretty straightforward rubric. I think you've seen rubrics like this before. But just in case you're wondering what it looks like, this is it. There are 5 things that I look at: organization, level of content, how well you developed it, your style, your formatting, and your grammar and mechanics. These are, typical things to think about. You can be anywhere from inadequate to exemplary along that line. Again, because you haven't seen my responses to your writing yet, and I haven't seen your writing yet, I wanted to be as clear as possible about, in general, what I'm looking for. So I would take a look at this rubric and just be sure that you understand what the different expectations are. This is a very short assignment, as I've talked about before when we met during week 4, that this is a short assignment and it has a low total point, value, so that I can grade and you can write, and then we can kind of see what the expectations are from each side. Then there's some stuff down here about, I think it's all relevant to Blackboard, so good for them. You can attach a file. I would appreciate it if you would attach a file in a format that you think would be the most readable or easy to understand. I can make comments very easily on documents that are, Word docs. It's possible to do it on PDFs. But it's a little more difficult for you to read, I think, when it happens that way. But you submit it in whatever format you think works best for you. And if I find that there's a specific preference after this time around, I'll tell you. All right. And then I guess you can make comments before you hit submit. So make sure you do that by September 25th. That's Tuesday, so that's coming early in the week. Next, for the content learning. So I mentioned in our synchronous live session in week 4 that it seems like you guys like structure, and that you might need a little more structure than I've been providing you in terms of the content and the learning. So, hey, your prayers have been answered. I'm going to provide you with a little more structure about the content. So we already know that this week's learning activities focus on the fact that educational reform or change often encounters resistance, and that's important. And that reform often ends in failure. And that's also important to recognize, even though we don't want it to. That is a sort of a fact of reform. So for better or for worse, this is normal and it's expected. But the key for us, either as educators or as school reformers, is to understand or predict potential resistance and identify the factors that make reforms either a success or a failure. In other words, we can learn from what's already happened. There's going to be no situation that's exactly like the situation we're ever in at any moment. That's absolutely true. But we can identify the factors that lead to success or that lead to the kinds of results that we're looking for. And we can either try to emphasize and increase those, or we can try to revise or eliminate the ones that haven't worked out. And we can do that both by looking at what other people have done, which is what we're going to be doing in our content for week 5, or we can pilot things in our own schools, districts, classrooms, whatever they might be, and do that sort of action research where we try to investigate what is working versus what is not. There are several objectives for this week's learning. I've listed them here. Again, I'm trying to be a little more structured for you guys so you know exactly what I'm trying to get us to do. The objectives for this week's learning are to understand the elements of educational organization and system structure. So again, I think I come into this course making some assumptions about what you do and don't know. This is one of the things that I think is a foundational understanding that most educators and professionals working in education have to understand if they're going to be able to implement change. You have to have a firm conceptual or theoretical understanding of how organizations work, as well as a more practical or pragmatic understanding and experience in how those organizations work. I think that, and I'll tell you one of my assumptions about you guys. I assume that most of you have a pretty firm understanding of the practical or pragmatic because you're either working in schools or you have been connected to educational systems very closely, so you understand what that looks like. What I'm not sure is that you have much of a conceptual understanding of organizational systems, broadly speaking. So we're going to look at some theoretical elements and see if we can tie those to the practical. I also want us to think about the importance of tight, loose, and decoupling to school reform and educational change. This is a very specific way of thinking about the ways that organizations work and how the things that organizations do is tied to the things that organizations say they're going to do, and whether it's a tight, loose, or decoupled connection. I'd like for us to think about and understand the differences between both organizational and structural resistance in schools, systems, and classrooms. That's going to be important for us to think about how resistance occurs not from individuals and people only, but also through the ways that our educational systems are organized and the policies or the structures or the embedded institutionalized expectations that are part of that organization. And then finally, I want us to look at the alignment between context, organizational structure, and educational change that leads to successful, whatever that might be, and sustainable reform versus failed or stagnant reform. And that's going to specifically refer to our case study. Okay, so to do that, I've put together a couple different learning modules. In fact, there are 2 learning modules. One is about the role of organizational structure in educational change. The other is the understanding and overcoming resistance to reform. And within each of these, I've structured what I'd like for you to do. And here's what I suggest. I suggest that you start at the top of this page and you move to the bottom. And so I've added, obviously I've included your required readings. That's a given. But I've added in some short videos. I've added in some optional readings. I've added in, some things along the way to help you work through some of this content so that you're not just reading the blank canvas of the required readings and then trying to guess at what the important parts are. Although you guys are in a doctoral program, so you're probably pretty good at identifying what those important parts are. But I want to guide you through that a little bit. So again, start at the top and then move sequentially down the page. So I would start by reading Meyer and Rowan's 1983 work, The Structure of Educational Organizations. It is a chapter in this volume called Organizational Environments, Ritual and Rationality. This book is available through the Texas Tech Library, but it's I know that many of you are at a distance, so I have not provided a link here yet. I will work on getting that copied and put up, but you should have ways to get PDF chapters out of required readings through the library. And if you haven't done that before for previous classes, could you let me know, and I will work with the library to make sure that there's a clear way for you to do that. The point of the Meyer and Rowan reading is to understand the connections, both tight and loose couplings, between what educational organizations say they do and what they actually do. That's my point for you reading it. I think this reading provides a really nice conceptual, or sometimes use the word theoretical framework through which we can better understand the phenomenon of school reform. Meyer and Rowan wrote another piece about educational organizations that talks about myth and rationality. And how there's a mythology that goes with schooling, and that means what do we expect? What's our cultural expectations for it? How do we believe in schooling? That sort of thing. And there's a rationality to it. So rationality doesn't mean always that things work. It just means that we think they work. And so they provide a background about that as well in this article. So I'd like for you to watch that. Then I would like for you to take a closer look at Carl Weick's Loosely Coupled Systems, Loose and Tight Coupling. This is about a 7-minute video on YouTube. You can also look at his original article from 1976. There's also like a really nice summary of his classic article from 76. This is all optional, obviously, but I would like for you to watch this video no matter what. It will give you a little more background into the idea of loosely coupled systems, and it's a nice complement to the Meyer and Rowan article in talking about the structure of educational organizations versus the activity of educational organizations. Okay. The next required reading in this module I want you to look at is Cuban's Chapter 6 from this book, Inside the Black Box of Classroom Practice. This one is linked for you because it's available on the internet, so you can find it easily. This is a good chapter because I think that the point of reading it is to identify the ways that educational structure is manipulated in the name of change, but that these efforts are often decoupled from changes in teaching and learning. So it's just another way of thinking about the tight versus loose versus decoupling that goes on within the structure of educational organizations, and how what they say they do and what they actually do is often unlinked. Cuban points more of an accusatory finger at schools and reformers, and talking about how it has a little effect on teaching practice. That's important for us, especially when we have so much of our conversation this semester focused on developing human capital in teachers as part of what we do as administrators or leaders in our schools. There's also about a 9-minute video from Larry Cuban on educational reform. You'll get to see Larry Cuban. He's not the most dynamic person to watch, probably like me in this video. But he is, quite frankly, a pillar in the educational reform community in the United States, and he has a lot of interesting things to say. He's also a critic, and I think that's important to recognize. He's a good example of those who critique, but as I say, don't necessarily solve. And we want to be able to critique and provide solutions. So it gives us a way to think about what does and does not work in terms of our critiques of reform. But I think his critiques have merit, which is why we pay attention. He points out what is wrong with school reform, generally speaking, and provides some general guidelines for ways that we can alternatively approach or better approach educational change. And when I say general guidelines, I mean general. He's not going to give us a lot of specifics. But the general guidelines that he provides, you'll have to see when you read the article and you watch the video. But the general guidelines he provides, I agree with. I think those are good guidelines. What I don't understand is how he proposes that we actually implement them. And that becomes our challenge increasingly as we move through this course. Okay, I'm going to pause here, and I will come back in the second part to our introduction to week